Today I want to talk about something a little weird, but that's also vitally important to most MMOs. I'm a bit of a boring person, so you know what really makes me think? The economy. Today I want to look at a few ways that people trade, buy, and sell items in some MMOs, and briefly talk about their pros and cons for a game like Palia, which has yet to publicly confirm how or even if player trading will take place within the game. Although we do know there's a currency, so the economy lives on. I'm going to talk about 3 ways that trade is done in games and what I think the downsides are. Pretty simple. The first system I want to talk about, if you couldn't tell from the title, is auction houses, which are used across many theme park style MMOs as well as a few others, under many different names. The auction house is a singular, centralized buying and selling point where players can list and deposit items and other players can buy said items, and they're usually delivered to the player via mailbox. In most games, there's a small tax to use this service that can act as a way to get players to actually trade face to face, but for a majority of them, it's not really worth the hassle. In many games, these are accessible by everyone, although in some games, the auction houses may be split by faction or location. Auction houses as such are fairly common in modern MMOs, and I find them to be a very impersonal experience. You don't need to go anywhere or see anything to get your goods. You don't need to interact with anyone. And for many people, this is fine, if not a benefit of the system, but is it really what you want in a community-driven game? There are some benefits to this system though. I find the main one to be that players can interact with the market at any time during the day. An especially important feature for those players who tend to play games during off or non-peak hours. I don't personally prefer this style of trading goods, so if Palia does include some sort of buying and selling of items, this is a system that I hope that they avoid practically the most. Okay, so if we go all the way to the other extreme, you can go with a more old school Diablo-esque route of no money, no centralized trading service, and the entire game requires face-to-face selling. This usually ends up with one or more items being given a general value by the community, and those items then become the currency used for trades. There's no real reason to talk too much about this method, although I should say that it's the most open to players scamming each other, as switching item trades or not giving proper items and such can be pulled off with fairly little effort. Meaning that unless you're dealing with someone you absolutely trust, you'll need to be on guard at all times during trades. This and the fact that this style of trading completely excludes those players who do play off hours means that I also do not think that this is a good method of trade for our community-based game. So, if two extremes don't work, obviously we're entirely out of options and nothing ever will, says someone who grew up in the US political system. But unlike a politician seeking re-election in the next cycle, I think that we can search for some kind of middle ground. The variation that I wanted to talk about today comes from a little known MMO that I have talked way too much about on this channel about Palia. That's right, it comes from Star Wars Galaxies. I should probably explain, huh? Okay, so in Star Wars Galaxies, player housing is a thing, and you can place a house practically anywhere. They are not instanced, they are in the open world, and players can decorate them in fantastic ways. On top of this, you're able to hire or obtain NPCs that sit in your house and sell items for you. The game does have an auction house-like system called the Bazaar that's like a centralized auction house for a region, but it's a little too convenient, so let's come back to that at the end. If I want to buy my own house from, I don't know, Joe Schmo 37, I need to get in my hover car, fly over to their personal house, and interact with their NPC store to buy my items. In this process, I see, and more importantly in my case, I get inspired by Joe Schmo 37's decoration style. With this method, players can trade at any time during the day, as, NPCs can persist while players are offline. And players don't need to stand around yelling for hours like they would if there was no market at all. And finally, people need to interact with other players and their creations. Personally, I think this is a fantastic middle ground for a community-driven game, but there is a downside, I guess. You actually need to go get your items from a shop. Personally, I don't see this as a problem, but for the lazy ones out there, Galaxies did have an auction house system for local regions that sort of solves this problem, and also acts as a billboard for all the shops, so it's not actually that hard to go out of your way to get a waypoint for them. And, well, that's it. I'm done. That's the big idea that I wanted to talk about today, and that's the discussion that I want to have, because I know that there are many, many more ways to do player buying and selling in MMOs. So if you have your own ideas or have seen some that you think would work in Palia, please leave them in the comments below. That said, bartering is out because I hate that. Thanks for watching.